Playoffs? We're talking about playoffs. It's the fantasy football playoffs. Jesse Rubinoff alongside Donovan Bennett and Andy McNamara. This is Sportsnet Fantasy Playbook Live. And gentlemen, we've made it. Week 15 of the NFL season, and it
Wait.
is playoff time.
Have we made it though?
Have we?
Have we made it? Playoffs. Symptoms? We're talking about symptoms?
Yeah.
That's what you should have said. We made it, but we're
Like,
staggering to the
We're hanging on. We're hanging on by an absolute thread. We had football going last night. We were supposed to have 2 games yesterday, but what has become sort of the regular now in the National Football League and across sports, COVID is obviously raging and games are being moved left, right, and center. So I guess that's one place to begin while we welcome all the viewers. And please ask as many questions as you want. We will try to get to all of them today. But the first question I want to ask the both of you is, obviously we're in a situation here where many people are in the playoffs, or most people are in the playoffs, and you have games that have been moved to either Monday or Tuesday. The Browns case is Monday. The Seahawks and Rams moved to Tuesday. Eagles and Washington football team moved to Tuesday. So say you have a fantasy player that you were expecting to go on Sunday, and that has now been moved to Monday or Tuesday. And there is the looming shadow of COVID. You don't know when it's going to strike. And then once Monday and Tuesday rolls around, you are most definitely out of options. So Andy, I'll begin with you. How, from a fantasy football roster construction standpoint, how do you navigate going forward to the Monday and Tuesday games?
It's so tough, guys. It is difficult because, like you said, if you get to that point and you guess wrong, you're out. That's it. And this is the playoffs. This isn't like a week 8 thing. This is do or die time here. So my advice has been going into this weekend, if you are on the fence, like let's say you are in a near tie in your mind between player A and player B, and player A plays Sunday, player B plays Monday or Tuesday, I would go with the guy who's playing today. Nothing extreme. You don't take a RB1 for a third stringer. But if it's close, play the guy who is going to play the soonest. Because as we've seen, stuff can come out of absolutely nowhere and just decimate a team, a player, whatever. So if you don't have to risk it, don't.
Donovan, I'll ask you the same question, because a lot of people are in the same spot here of not knowing whether they should wait until Monday or Tuesday, but obviously with that comes a lot of risk.
Yeah, well, the overall disclaimer that we have to cite when having all these conversations is that ultimately fantasy football is that fantasy, and it's for fun. And so I just urge people, whether they're going back and forth with their league commissioners on what they're going to do, and if we're going to change waivers or create more IR spots or just make up the rules all entirely, let's just have a common sense approach to all of this stuff, because it is for fun, and we are still, as we can see, in a real pandemic where there's some things that really, really matter. In terms of how you build your roster, Andy has talked about this extensively. I feel the same way. In a way, fantasy football is a week-to-week sport where you are trying to make decisions to remove any uncertainty as possible, or lean to things that are the most certain, the most probable to happen. And certainly when it's close, if someone's playing today at 1 o'clock or today at 4:25, 4:30, then that is more certain than someone playing potentially on Monday or Tuesday, because obviously things could happen, or the game might not happen, quite frankly. And so if you're going back and forth based off the projections, said players projected to score a point more, half a point more, play the player that you know for sure you think is going to play today. And so I have the same belief when it comes to the Thursday games, theoretically, and so certainly I'm applying that same logic when it comes to these games, because even though the NFL has changed the protocols to, in my understanding of it, make it more likely for players to get back on the field quicker, you never know with the extended time that a vaccinated player who is asymptomatic is on a targeted team, and the teams who are having their games moved are now targeted, having to test more, and thus could either get a positive, or in the case of Higbee, a false positive. Yeah. So play the guys you know are going to play if it's close.
Yeah, it's just unprecedented times right now. So the Browns game gets moved, and obviously, the Browns have been absolutely ravaged by COVID. And you have a guy like Nick Chubb, who you're expecting to go on a Sunday, and now that game gets moved, and it's like, okay, we know that COVID is somewhere in that room. Like, let's try and bubble wrap him, because Nick Chubb is sometimes the difference between a week victory or a league victory. So there's a lot of people I know that have been looking at the roster and saying, like, okay, this is a difficult spot for me, but there's only so much that you can do with only so many options available in fantasy football without really reaching for the bottom of the barrel. So,
the other thing, Jesse, and this is a specific Week 15 scenario, is we know that the players are being granted the opportunity to opt out as of Monday.
Yeah.
So I don't expect it to be big, but we do know, in 2020, there was a sizable amount of players who did opt out. So theoretically, you could have a player that's supposed to go on a Monday or a Tuesday opt out, and you lose him not just for this week, you lose him for the rest of the season. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But when we were having, live stream last week, I had no idea that over 100 players are going to test positive this week. So who knows? So again, play the guys that you have going for you today, and hope it gets you through to another round.
Well, and to your point, Donovan, it's not just the stars, but if somebody opts out, like we saw the Canadian, right? Tardif, I forget his name, the doctor guy, whatever.
Duvernay Tardif.
Yeah.
Duvernay Tardif, yeah.
When he opted out, that's a lineman, right? An offensive lineman. So what does that affect? That could affect quarterback protection. That could affect running game. So it's not just the stars, though. And so that's a great point, Donovan. And I think hammers home again, if you can get a guy to play today, do it.
No question about it. Okay, let's get to a couple questions here. This is where, fellas, we really need to make our hay here. We've had a show. This is week 15 of this show, and it's playoff time, baby.
Let's go.
About the viewers. Vinny Stantz on Twitter is asking.
Congrats making the playoffs, everyone who's watching.
Yes, that is a big congratulations.
If you're on the consolation side of the bracket, like, you're lucky if you filled out your roster. So congrats everyone that's watching.
Have some pride.
Hold on. Yeah. Okay. Yes,
we play to win the week.
Before we get to the questions, Andy, so say, I know you would never be in the consolation side of the bracket,
Absolutely
but
not.
say you were in the consolation side of the bracket. Are you filling out a roster? Like, should you be picking up people off waivers? Like, what are the rules if you're in that situation? What would you do?
For me, I play, if I was ever, which I would never be, but if I was, guys, I would play it out, because you want to get that last win. You at least want to leave on a high note, right? You want to leave on that high note. Now, also depends on your rules. What I did a couple years ago, I was ravaged by injuries at the end. I got hosed, and it was like, whatever. I'll make excuses. And I was in the consolation bracket. Well, my commissioner did not stop waiver wire pickups for consolation bracket people. So what I did was I tried to hose the other players who were in the playoffs. I went to ruin their weeks, which is just, if you're playing with friends, if you can't win, you want to drag as many to fantasy hell with you as you can. So see the rules. If you can ruin somebody else's week, do it. Have that as your victory.
Deej, same with you. Like, I know you would never be in the consolation side of the bracket either, but if you were, are you okay with picking up from the waiver wire if you're on the consolation side of the bracket, or should commissioners just lock you out?
Listen, I have 5 teams. I am in the consolation side of the bracket in some of them.
Fair enough.
Waiver, no, that's a little too aggressive. Like, I'm not, I'm not looking to stream a tight end this week. But will I set my lineup? 100%. Yeah, I do care about, my overall win percentage, on, I'm not going to say a name of a site, but on said site that you use. So yeah, I will set my lineup, and bragging rights do matter.
It's so good. Okay, Vinny Sent on Twitter is asking, who would you rather, AJ Green or Dawson Knox for flex? Just a little bit of context. DeAndre Hopkins, torn MCL, so he's going to be gone. I know there was a report today that he might, in fact, be able to come back if the Cardinals do make it to the NFC Championship, but that doesn't really affect fantasy players in any way, shape, or form. So AJ Green, elevated role today. Andy, who you going with here?
I'm still going with Dawson Knox. I like what AJ Green. He's done better than I thought he would overall in the year. But you also have Christian Kirk, who I like better in that offense from a reliability standpoint. Dawson Knox has become a consistent part of that Bills offense all year when healthy. He has. So I don't see how I can take him out for an AJ Green, who very well could have a good day, but I would feel more comfortable, especially in the playoffs. Do you really want to have, you've gotten this far. Is this the time you want to really roll the dice? Depends on how, your opponent is, whatever, but I would go with Dawson Knox.
Deej, same question for you, AJ Green or Dawson Knox?
I'm rolling the dice. Give me some AJ Green. Give me some Christian Kirk. Even in a flex spot, I'll take a look at Rondale Moore if I need to, if my situation calls for it. Ertz as a tight end. Give me all of the Cardinals skill position players. One, they are a heavily favored team this week. I think they're going to put up a lot of points. But two, Josh Allen was walking in a walking boot for 3 days this week. So I'm not certain, the health of, the guy who has to get Dawson Knox the ball. That's one. Two, you're going against a really good defense in Carolina. And so that's a playoff defense, even though the team is not going close to the playoffs. The Bills haven't been great at home, only 3-3 at home. But three, everybody in their mother has said, Buffalo, will you run the goddamn football? Like, please. So I expect Brian Daboll to run the ball. Now, a lot of you, relax YouTube, relax Twitter, relax Twitch. A lot of you are saying, hey, Donovan, you told us last week that Robinson was going to get the ball because everyone was calling for it, and Urban Meyer can't be that stubborn. Well, I was wrong. Urban Meyer is watching the stream just like
he's a madman,
and I was wrong. He is a madman. But I do believe that Brian Daboll isn't a madman and is going to make a concerted effort to be a little bit more balanced offensively. All that to say, I like AJ Green's matchup much more.
I'll say this, guys. Off of that point, I think James Robinson is a smash play today. I believe the Jaguars are going to feel that weight lifted. They're going to want to prove a point. They're going to want to show up, crazy old man Herb, and see that he was wrong. I think this is a big day for James Robinson.
Okay, so I really hope you're right because I have James Robinson in one of my leagues, and I really hope it's a smash spot. But I feel like this is a situation where everybody is aligned here now. Like Urban Meyer's gone. They've been talking up James Robinson all week, and it just screams like too many people are on board here. It screams like he's going to flop. Yeah, it's against Houston, and believe me, I hope you're right, and I think you're probably right, but it always scares me when everybody has the same opinion that one guy is going to smash. Okay, Hemi on YouTube, pick 2, Darrell Henderson, I believe Michael Carter, Sony Michel, or Chase Claypool. Do we want to talk about Chase Claypool first? Personal foul, gets benched, nearly fumbles, then celebrates in the middle of a 2-minute drill. I mean, this guy, these are real-life fantasy issues, not necessarily real-life football issues, not necessarily fantasy issues. But the ceiling is so high for Chase Claypool if he could only just sort of get it under control, right, Donovan?
Yeah, and he still had a good fantasy day.
Yeah,
probably would have potentially had a better one if they spotted the ball and were able to run some more offensive plays. I think the real question is whether or not all that you've mentioned implicate him in terms of being in a doghouse, Mike Tomlin being frustrated, not playing him, not giving him snaps. And even if Mike Tomlin really, really wanted to prove a point, does he want to cut off his nose despite his face? Like, they only have so many talented players on offense, specifically with Schuster done for the year. Claypool is physically, I would say, the most talented. I would throw, Najee Harris in that conversation. Mm-hmm. So they have no choice but to play him. And Mike Tomlin's a pretty straight shooter, and he said, we're going to continue to help him grow as long as he's a willing participant. Mm-hmm. And so I take that to mean he's going to play, and, he may not be a Steeler for life. They might get fed up at some point, but while he's there, he's going to play. And so I don't actually think that's going to implicate him. But in terms of the discussion, in terms of, picking 2, I don't think I actually would have Claypool in my 2. I think Henderson's a question because he hasn't practiced regularly for a couple weeks and he had multiple ailments, but the thigh is the one that really concerns you. That impacts the value of Sony Michel. I think you're definitely not playing both of them. But assuming Henderson is back, he's going to get the lead carries. I'll give it to him. And then Carter has worked himself back. And everything that you've heard out of New York is that he is expected to get significant work and be the lead back. I am a little bit concerned because, Coleman is back from the concussion. And so will he vulture some carries? But I would take it to two guys who I have, as RB2s over, Claypool on an offense that has been up and down.
Andy, same question for you. Darrell Henderson, Michael Carter, Sony Michel, or Chase Claypool?
Yeah, I think Henderson, if he's back, no injury designation. Could he get re-injured? Absolutely. But I would rather chance it with him. We've seen when both are in there, Michel is an afterthought. And he's done pretty well in spot duty, which is encouraging. But I would say Henderson and Michael Carter, because, it's been said he is going to be worked in heavily. So it doesn't appear that he will be sort of on that dreaded pitch count phrase coming back in. They're going to throw him right in there. Because really, who else you got? You have Braxton Berrios and you got Michael Carter. What else are you going to do? You're going to have to feed him the ball.
It's ugly. When it comes to Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson, is there at least a little bit of a chance here where Sean McVay looks at the success that Sony Michel has had while Darrell Henderson's been out, and Sony Michel begins the game as the starter because of a number one injury concerns, re-injury risk with Darrell Henderson, but also just efficiency from an efficiency standpoint, because Sony Michel has really been an effective early down back in the absence of Darrell Henderson, and the Rams have had some success without Darrell Henderson. So how would you ballpark that risk when it comes to Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel, Andy?
Well, I think that's certainly possible, but we're not going to know that information, right? Yeah. Unless something is leaked, we're not going to know that. So then we're guessing as to what happened. So I'm going to lean with Henderson's healthy. Henderson's back from injury. When he has been available, he's the guy. Could we see some sort of more of a timeshare? Absolutely. That is definitely a case. We see enough of these committees around the NFL to know that could be the case for sure. But with all that being said, out of those options for that question, I still would rather Henderson and Carter over the other two.
Bet on track record for the season.
Yeah, that's all you can do. Like that's all you can get yourself in circles when it comes to fantasy. Well, this, and then before you know it, you're playing Braxton Berrios.
You don't want that whatsoever. Ariel on YouTube is asking Brandon Cooks or Devontae Parker. It's a full PPR. And we know that Jalen Waddle is out for the Dolphins due to COVID. So, Donovan, I'll go to you. Brandon Cooks or Devontae Parker? Davis Mills throwing the ball to Brandon Cooks today.
Yeah, I mean, and Davis Mills had some decent games earlier in the year. Cooks is the much more consistent player. And, again, you're looking for consistency. So, I would lean Cooks. In the Waddle injury, makes me think about it. But I think, it just becomes a much more of a Gesicki and Gaskin game for Miami than anything else. And so I'll stick with Cooks.
Andy, same question.
I'm going to go Parker. Now, if Waddle was in the game, not a question, you're going with Cooks. Because he's not, we know that when Parker's been in there, the rare times, Tua has looked his way often. So I think it's going to be a day where both Gesicki and Parker can have fantasy value, and also probably Myles Gaskin as well. And it's versus the Jets again. So I think there's going to be opportunity for all those guys. I would take that safer floor again over Brandon Cooks, who Davis Mills, he's been able to put up the odd number, and Jacksonville certainly isn't, going to be scaring anybody. But just that sort of feel I get, Cooks is still so up and down in that offense as far as like he's going to boom or he's going to bust. I'd go safer with Parker.
Yeah, and that speaks to something we've talked about a lot over the course of the year. It's what exactly are you looking for out of that spot? Are you looking for a higher ceiling or a higher floor? And in this case, potentially the higher floor could be with Devontae Parker. But ultimately, that is a good question because we're split down the middle here. George on Facebook says, "Hi, guys. I'm a consolation loser." Don't approach it like that, George. That happens to everybody. Moved over to DFS to feed the need. Amari Cooper or T. Higgins on DraftKings. Amari Cooper, who is from Donovan Bennett's Cowboys, $100 cheaper. So, Donovan, I'll begin with you. T. Higgins, who has been on an absolute heater for the Bengals, 3 100-yard plus games in his last 3. And Amari Cooper, who's starting to get back to what we know Amari Cooper can do after dealing with numerous illnesses over the last few weeks. So who are you going with there?
I'm going with Higgins. I mean, $100 is not enough savings for me. Amari Cooper has been too boom or bust. And quite frankly, in a way, in daily fantasy, when you're talking about wide receivers, you're also betting on the quarterbacks a little bit, just, not paying that premium. And Dak hasn't been very good since coming back from the calf injury. So certainly I think I would take Higgins, knowing that, if he has a out of character, day with not a lot of production, it happens. But if Cooper does it, there has been a bit of a track record there, and you would blame yourself. So I would say Higgins.
Andy T. Higgins averaging 17.4 yards per catch over his last 3, but him and Jamar Chase going up against 2 pretty good corners today, and Patrick Surtain and Ronald Darby. So who are you going with here, T. Higgins or Amari Cooper being $100 cheaper?
Well, it's interesting because I feel both offenses are similarly built with the same type of questions. You have 3 potential star wide receivers on each team, right? You got Cooper, Lamb, Gallup for the Cowboys, and you have Chase, Higgins, and Boyd for the Bengals. So it's a very similar situation. I like the matchup for Dallas better, but I like the quarterback talent, how he's playing right now, and the run that Higgins has been on, despite maybe the better coverage that they'll be getting. So I'm going to say Higgins as well.
Yeah, it's funny how in Cincinnati it seems like it's flipped a little bit between Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Yeah. Jamar Chase still obviously a touchdown threat, a big play threat, but you wonder if those drops that he's had over the course of the year, and it started during the preseason, you wonder if that's affected how Joe Burrow looks his way or how often he decides to look his way, and the confidence between the two of them. Okay, moving on. Bernardo on Twitter is asking Dalton Schultz or Zach Ertz at tight end. I know Ertz questionable to play, but is leaning towards playing in this game today. And Donovan, you mentioned Dalton Schultz with the Cowboys. Dak has been struggling a little bit as of late. So who are you rolling with in the tight end position there?
Zach Ertz. And I think, Dalton Schultz, since becoming starter has, looked like a young Zach Ertz. But Zach Ertz has looked like a young Zach Ertz since, joining the Cardinals. And Schultz is someone who, again, since Dak has been back, his production has been down. He was invisible a week ago in the Cowboys offense. And do I expect that to revert to the mean before the end of the season? Yes. Do I think you want to risk it, given that this part of the fantasy season really, really matters? No. So I would take Ertz.
Andy.
Yeah. See, I want to go with Dalton Schultz. I do, but the targets, the trend has been down, down, down. So I think we're going to have to err on seeing that connection, seeing Dak Prescott play really well, seeing Schultz getting the ball more. We're going to have to probably have him on the bench and see it before feeling comfortable to play it. So I'll go with Ertz as well, assuming, again, that there's not some setback or something.
Yeah, he is leaning towards playing. Yeah. And speaking of players who are playing when it comes to the Cowboys, Tony Pollard looks like he will be active today for the Cowboys. Deej, just from a fan perspective, not even necessarily a fantasy perspective, Tony Pollard has looked like the better running back for the majority of the season. Ezekiel Elliott is running with a brace now. So should fantasy managers fire up Tony Pollard with confidence, even though he probably won't be at 100% dealing with foot sprain?
No, not with confidence. I mean, you look at the 2 injuries. Zeke's got the PCL sprain, and so he's braced up, and even after runs, it's a struggle for him to get back to his feet.
Yeah.
But Pollard's entire game is his explosion, his ability to outrun angles. And, with, a plantar fasciitis injury, the way it is, it's almost like you feel like every time you take a step, you're stepping on glass. And so I don't expect him to be nearly as productive. And so that's why, I would say, I would say stay away until we see, him put together a couple weeks of good production.
Yeah, Andy, it seems like the plantar fasciitis injury is one that big men in the NBA have struggled with historically for years, and it can stick with you for your entire career. So if you're Tony Pollard, I'm sure you don't want to risk anything there. But how confident would you be firing him up today, given what that injury could be like?
Anything that involves that type of injury for that type of player, that the decision is being made on game day, concerns me a lot. Mm-hmm. Like Donovan said, the explosion, but also the cuts, the pivots, the footwork, the break an ankle type of moves. Can I count on that? I can't. I just can't. So I'd rather, if I'm looking between the two, I would rather go with a Zeke Elliott who has played last week. He's gotten used to the brace more. He said earlier in the week his knees felt the best it has in a long time. He's got the brace. So at least has been used to playing with it. So if it's out of the two today, just because it's a game time decision, we don't know. Pollard, like we saw, a few weeks ago at DeAndre Hopkins, game time decision, 2 plays in, gone. I don't want to be in that world. I'd rather go with Zeke.
Yeah, and it's a great point that both of you make, that the explosiveness is where Tony Pollard really makes hay. It's those big runs that have been salvaging his fantasy output over the course of the season. Yes, he doesn't get a ton of carries, so it comes down to efficiency. And if he's not going to be the same with that explosiveness, that's really going to hurt his fantasy outlook for sure. Glenn on Facebook is asking, we go back to the Brandon Cooks or Russell Gage, who has made a little bit of a name for himself here late in the season in terms of fantasy, one of the only options that Matt Ryan can rely on in Atlanta. So, Andy, I'll begin with you here, Brandon Cooks or Russell Gage.
I love Russell Gage. I've written about him a couple of weeks in a row, going back a couple of weeks in the weekly Sportsnet waiver wire article. The guy's just, look, he is a PPR dream. He gets a ton of targets. He's getting you 7, as many as 12 2 weeks ago, 8. He's catching. Defenses are focusing on Kyle Pitts. You still have to concern yourself with Cordarrelle Patterson. Is he in the backfield? Is he a wideout? Is he in the slot? Where is he? And through all that, Russell Gage squeaks and moves his way in and gives you good fantasy output. The guy's going to get you in the mid to high teens, it seems, almost every single week. I think it's a great play, and I would much rather go with him over Brandon Cooks and Davis Mills.
It really is amazing, Donovan, when you look at the Falcons and you look at Matt Ryan's output. He's been held to under 200 passing yards in 5 of his last 7 games. But somehow here, since Calvin Ridley's been out of the lineup, it seems like Russell Gage is someone that you can rely on in that wide receiver 3 sort of PPR role. Is it enough for you to start him over Brandon Cooks, who I know you had said earlier that you would have been playing in the previous question?
Yeah, I would start Gage. Listen, he's someone I picked up mid-season and threw him in there in a flex spot because I needed to, because of some IR, some buy issues, and I haven't been able to get out of it. Because even though there's players with bigger names, his production is so solid. Last 4 weeks, he's been a double-digit fantasy producer in most scoring leagues. So, when he's up and when he's healthy, he's giving you double-digit fantasy points. And so, again, you want the certainty, and he's a sure thing. So I'll go Russell Gage.
Awesome. Stephen G on YouTube is asking, start 2 in a full PPR league, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, or Darrell Henderson. We've already gone down the Darrell Henderson road. Josh Jacobs, sort of the unquestioned workhorse in Las Vegas with Jalen Richard will be back in the lineup today, so it might take a couple touches away, but Kenyon Drake's out with a broken ankle for the rest of the year. And Saquon Barkley had a decent week last week, but he's had some trouble, Andy, finding room to navigate behind that New York Giants offensive line. So when you have the option of these 3, you got to start 2. It's a full PPR. Which direction are you going?
I'm going Jacobs for sure. Again, we have that question mark, not so much on the Raiders side, but playing the Browns. It's Monday, so, okay, you just have to keep that in mind. I'm comfortable playing Jacobs, though, out of the 2. Comes to the other one, I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. And I don't love it. But and even though we saw Booker get some touches as well, I still feel that might be, out of those 2 for this week specifically, a better play than Henderson off of injury. Now, again, he could go straight up and light it up, and he's not injured. You have Sony Michel there. I still think I want to go with the potential more touches and who's going to get the more opportunity. I think that's Barkley today.
Donovan, do you agree? Saquon is just a frustrating case because the talent just jumps off the page, jumps off the TV screen at you. But unfortunately, given the situation in New York, it hasn't been the most fruitful career for Saquon Barkley up to this point. Obviously, injuries have played a factor as well. But in this specific case, are you rolling with Saquon Barkley? Has he done enough to give you the edge here?
No, he hasn't. And listen, the fact that it's PPR makes it a decision for me, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't be a decision, because Saquon gets a bunch of screens and swing passes that go for no yards, but in PPR, at least got the ball. Since coming back from injury, he has one touch in the red zone. One. This is not the pathway you want to points, but a couple things. The fact that game has been postponed scares me. So Jacobs is a question for me. I'm playing Henderson assuming he's healthy regardless. I think he is a legit RB1. And so then when you look between Saquon and Jacobs, again, I would lean Jacobs, but I'm not sure he's going to play. It is PPR, which gives Saquon a little bit more value. So in this weird week 15 week, I'm actually going to say Saquon, even though I don't feel great about it at all.
Yeah, it's a difficult spot to be in with Saquon Barkley. Like I said, he's got so much talent. You just hope at some point he'll be able to showcase that a little more than he's been able to so far in his career with the New York Football Giants. Okay, Marcos Valdez on Facebook. Green Bay Packers or Miami Dolphins defense says thank you. No, Marcos, thank you. So Andy, Green Bay or Miami today?
Well, the question is with Lamar Jackson, who has it's not a sprain on his ankle, it's a bone bruise. Last I saw, they're going to sort of test it out. He's looking unlikely to play. That might be something you're going to need to take up. Now, the problem is, though, that's a 4:25 game. Dolphins are a 1 o'clock game. So I would still say, you know what? Maybe if I wanted to get cute, I'd go Green Bay for a little risque. But the Jets, man. Come on. I know the Dolphins aren't what they were last year, but I'll take the Dolphins up against slender-shouldered Zach Wilson, that quarterback, and that backfield any day. I think I'll go Miami.
Yeah, you discussed it earlier. The Jets have absolutely no weapons anymore. There's no Elijah Moore. No. He's out. Corey Davis is out. So who are you afraid of? Braxton Berrios?
It's a Berrios, boys.
Yeah. And Zach Wilson's been, let's face it, he's been brutal all season long. So this is, I think, sort of a take-your-pick situation. But if you, like you said, Andy, I think if you want to get cute, Tyler Huntley has been coughing up the ball. He had 2 fumbles last week, 6 sacks in his previous outing. So Donovan, definitely a question mark here as to, it's a good question, Green Bay or Miami's defense here.
I'd take Miami's defense. I like the matchup against the Jets. I don't think Lamar is going to play. Only because, Lamar Jackson, that's not that mobile. What is the point of that, right? You might as well, if has a bone bruise and Huntley is healthy, if they did a 40-yard dash, Huntley's winning. So he's the more athletic player given their circumstance. And, there isn't that huge of a drop-off in terms of passing the ball. So I actually think Huntley probably will play, especially because, the Ravens should be looking to the long-term future given, they've got, playoff aspirations. But I still think the Jets, whose defense is not what they were last year, but has been much better of late. I think the Dolphins, are a much better play against the Jets.
So say Huntley plays, DJ. What does that do to the Ravens wide receiving core and just pass catchers in general? Because we know Mark Andrews has thrived irrespective of who the quarterback is. But then does Hollywood Brown, who has a really good chemistry with Lamar Jackson, do you downgrade Hollywood Brown? Do you bump up Rashad Bateman, who had a good week last week with Tyler Huntley playing? So how does it affect the Ravens pass catching situation?
To be honest, I don't think it impacts it that much. Listen, Lamar Jackson hasn't been playing out of his mind. It's not that long ago he threw 4 interceptions in a game. Now, they won the game, but that didn't help fantasy managers that week. So I don't think you're changing much in terms of how you utilize your Ravens players. Andrews is a must start at the tight end position, given where that position is in the league. Brown has been up and down, and so and he has also been questionable. But if you have a better option, I think you can lean away from Brown because he hasn't been, someone you can trust. But again, someone that should be starting for most people at this point of the year. And
Andy,
then
how about
everything
you?
else is a pass.
Yeah. Would Tyler Huntley starting scare you away from rostering any of the Ravens pass catchers, Andy?
I'm with Donovan. I don't think it's necessarily that big of a drop off because the pass game isn't anything to write home about anyway outside of Mark Andrews. So Tyler Huntley can get you some points with his legs. Like I sort of see him. I wouldn't want to play him in a fantasy playoff, but draft.
Andy's going Transformer on us, Deej.
A little early this week.
Little early. Usually it's around 12. But we'll get Andy back. Yeah, we addressed the Tyler Huntley, Lamar Jackson situation, so we can move on to the next question here. Deej, Jay on YouTube is asking, Michael Gallup, Brandon Ayuk, or James Robinson, pick one for flex. Jay says he's leaning towards Ayuk, who has been, let's face it, since a really slow start to the year, Ayuk's been a revelation. Game-winning touchdown last week against the Bengals. Who are you going with here? I know.
So after he called them losers a couple weeks ago, so I let's do a squad ride on James Robinson, shall we? Like, shouldn't we all, as good-hearted people, be cheering for him to have a massive day? So I think to answer your question is, my heart wants to say James Robinson, even though my head says Ayuk or Gallup.
Yeah, I mean, Andy, welcome back. The question is from Jay on YouTube asking, Michael Gallup, Brandon Ayuk, or James Robinson. Says he's leaning Brandon Ayuk, who has been really good lately. But I mean, this is the James Robinson question again, Andy. You think he's going to be getting 30 touches and 100 plus yards and 2 touchdowns? Because that just seems like it would be a storybook ending.
He might be in the Wildcat. He might throw it.
With how Lawrence has been playing, he might be.
Just beat James Robinson.
And to go back to, I'm not sure where my thought left off with Huntley, but like as kind of like a Taysom Hill type of plug and play for your DraftKings lineup could be a fun little start there. But I think it downgrades everybody. Not that there's that much of a difference again between him and Lamar passing wise, but I would try to avoid it. On this question, let's go James Robinson. Come on now. Like Ayuk, Deebo Samuel might be the best running back on that team. Elijah Mitchell's out. Ayuk could have a big day as well, but I'm just really, ever since Urban Meyer got fired, I just really feel, can't necessarily put a quantitative, scientific formula to it, but this is James Robinson's day. The team obviously loves him. Trevor Lawrence ran to Urban Meyer during the game, like, what are you doing? The team loves him. I think this is a showcase day for him. Out of the 3, go with him.
This is a James Robinson fan show. There's no question about it.
Absolutely.
Everybody around the football world wants to see James Robinson get touches, and we'll see if it comes to fruition today for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, Gary D on YouTube. DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, Chase Claypool, or Rashad Penny in a flex spot. Need one, and it's a full PPR. Andy, I don't want to say I'm leaning towards Rashad Penny because that would just be crazy, but I do want to address that he's a 2018 first-round pick. He runs a really quick 40. He's been banged up with injuries all his entire career, basically, but finally gets a chance last week to showcase, and he did exactly that. But going up against some stiff competition in this question as it pertains to Gary's roster. So who are you rolling with here?
I'm with you on Penny. I think, and I hope it's finally a breakout for him. And finally we're able to see, because in fantasy football, as we know, the more RB1s you have, the better. Because there's so few ones to begin with. Higgins is my place still, though. I want to see it another week out of Penny. I'm not saying you don't play him in any scenario. There's lots of scenarios where you can play Rashad Penny and feel good about it. In this case, though, I know what I get out of T. Higgins. I know he's a top target. I know he's been on a roll. I don't know if I can trust Rashad Penny and that just implosion overall in Seattle. So that implosion in Seattle, I don't know if I can trust that.
Yeah, so you look at the Seahawks situation. Tyler Lockett is currently on the COVID list, but that game has been moved, so you don't know whether he's going to play. And obviously, that affects DK Metcalf. If Tyler Lockett is out of the lineup, you would think that's a big bump for DK Metcalf. But at the same time, there's so much nuance here because it doesn't seem like Russ and DK Metcalf have been on the same page really at any chunk this season. So in this specific spot here, are you with Andy that T. Higgins is probably the way to lean, considering the nuances of each situation here?
I think I'm surprised it's even a question. I was waiting for like pick 2, like pick 3. I would pick 1. It's clearly T. Higgins. The only other person I would look at in terms of the Seahawks would be Metcalf and not necessarily Penny because of the fact that Lockett isn't going to play and that he has led them by far in targets. With 28%. That percentage has to go somewhere. If you need to stream a tight end, maybe you sprinkle something on Everett, but I think Metcalf naturally, just gets a bunch of those targets. But in this scenario specifically, Higgins is the play.
Just for some Seahawks context, I know I mentioned Tyler Lockett's on the COVID list. So is Alex Collins. So we'll see if he's able to make it back in time. Travis Homer didn't play last week. He will be back in the lineup this week. So that potentially could impact Rashad Penny as well. So you always got to sort of flush out the individual team circumstances when making a decision like that. But it's unanimous there. It's T. Higgins from the show. Albert on Facebook, Chuba Hubbard, Sony Michel, or Tony Pollard says his team is hurting this week, Andy. So Chuba Hubbard, the Panthers stink, let's face it.
Yeah.
They just stink. Their skill position players haven't been able to get it done since Christian McCaffrey's been in the lineup. It hasn't been going well. So is it enough to, who are you going with? Chuba Hubbard, Sony Michel, or Tony Pollard here?
Well, okay, so we talked about Tony Pollard earlier. Can we trust that foot? We can't. Sony Michel with Henderson back. Can we trust him to be a work back? I can't. What am I going to get out of Chuba Hubbard? Probably 9 points. So that's not great either. So now we're looking at, so to me, I come down to, all right, even though Amir Abdullah can stifle a little, he popped in a little bit. You have Cam Newton, PJ Walker in and out of the lineup. It's bizarre. It's crazy. I'm still going to go Chuba Hubbard. I don't like it, but I'm going to go Chuba Hubbard. I think if they're going to hand the ball, potentially that's the best case. But it's a mess.
Hey, Albert said his team was hurting, so we're just trying to pick up the pieces here and help. But you're right. I mean, the situation in Carolina it's a disaster. Cam Newton gets benched for 2 series at a time. Like nobody can really figure out what's going on. So DJ, let's help Albert in this situation. Chuba Hubbard, Sony Michel, or Tony Pollard.
Chuba Hubbard. The Canadian comes back close to Canada, kind of, even though not close to his home in Alberta. But listen, the Bills can't run the ball. Bills can't stop the run either. Can't stop a nosebleed, as Bart Scott would say. So that 9 points that Andy mentions that you're going to get from Chuba, I think is superior than what you're going to get from Michelle in a timeshare. And so I think Chuba is the play. And Pollard, he might not be on the field for 9 plays. So I think Chuba Hubbard is the guy.
Yeah, it's definitely a scary situation with Sony Michel and Tony Pollard because you don't know how much they're going to get the ball. Whereas at least you can look at Chuba Hubbard and say he is the RB1 on the Carolina Panthers despite what's happening in Carolina and how bad they've been lately. Jack on YouTube says, love the show, guys. Thank you, Jack. Thanks for watching. Jeff Wilson Jr., Chase Edmonds, half PPR. What are you guys thinking? Thank you. Jeff Wilson Jr., sort of a casualty, Andy, of the 49ers deciding to run the ball with their receivers every 2 seconds. We anticipated a big day for Jeff Wilson Jr. Didn't exactly pan out, and Chase Edmonds expected to be back in the lineup today. So who are you rolling with here?
I'm going to say Chase Edmonds. And to just what you said, Jesse, like I haven't seen it out of Jeff Wilson. We've been clamoring all year for different times. Jeff Wilson, this is the week. This is the week. It hasn't been the week. Now, Chase Edmonds coming back. Sounds like he's going to get a full workload. James Conner isn't at 100% either. I think Edmonds is the play. I would not anticipate any fantasy point bonanza from either guy, but I like Edmonds better here.
Deej, same question for you. I think the frustrating thing for Chase Edmonds is that number one, he hasn't been healthy, but number two, I'm not sure anybody anticipated this sort of red zone dominance that we've seen from James Conner this season, 14 touchdowns, and all of a sudden you're not looking Chase Edmonds' way in the red zone. So it has to be a big play for Chase Edmonds for him to get his value. That being said, the question here is Chase Edmonds or Jeff Wilson Jr. So who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going Chase Edmonds. And listen, I feel some Chase Edmonds pain right now. It was reported by Schefter last week. I said it on this show that he was going to come off the IR. As we know, he was playing a Monday game. I needed to win to get in. Was projected to win. Had Chase Edmonds starting. Didn't play. I'm on the consolation side of the bracket. So I'm saying you get Chase in, just to make me feel better. But Connor has been banged up. Chase has had the workload throughout the week. Was close to playing a week ago. They held him out. Now they really need him to play, but I do think he's ready. So I think he's going to get a big, look in that backfield. The other thing is, he's the far superior pass catcher of the two. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen in San Francisco when they've had, Mitchell out, it hasn't meant more carries for the other running backs. It's meant more carries for the receivers. And so I think Chase, is a guy who should have a solid day today.
Chase Edmonds, James Conner, and Zach Ertz all officially active today. Should pass that information along as well. El Duque 2K on YouTube says, good morning. Good morning, El Duque. Half point PPR. Do I start Aaron Jones or Darrell Henderson with A.J. Dillon getting the majority of the touches? He's worried about Green Bay's workload management of Aaron Jones. Donovan, got to be incredibly frustrating for Aaron Jones fantasy owners that A.J. Dillon is not only getting looks, but he's the one that when they're winning, and they've been winning a lot, he's the one that's salting the game away in garbage time. So Aaron Jones finds himself on the bench late, and that doesn't help fantasy managers. So who are you going with here, Aaron Jones or Darrell Henderson?
No, not at all. The brass in Green Bay would say, well, listen, fantasy managers, we're trying to make sure that you have Aaron Jones for the entire season. So you're welcome, but that doesn't help you because fantasy is a week-to-week sport. And for that very reason, why I would pick Henderson. I like the matchup. Again, I think at this point in their careers, even though when you look at where they've been drafted over the last couple of years, you would think the opposite. But at this point, Henderson is the superior fantasy player, and so I think you can start him comfortably.
Yeah, Andy, like I said, the Aaron Jones situation, like just oozing with talent. And a lot of times he was sort of ballparked to be in that top 8 sort of running back on the running back ladder going into the season, but I'm not sure it's necessarily panned out the way managers have anticipated. So Aaron Jones or Darrell Henderson back from injury today.
Yeah, I think also we have to realize they're playing the Ravens, and the Ravens secondary really banged up. Run defense still really good, and that's where they're gonna make. And I think Aaron Rodgers will beat them, but they're gonna make Aaron Rodgers throw it up, which is fine. That's gonna work out okay. But yeah, for Aaron Jones, you have the split with Dillon up against a really good run defense. So I think the answer is Henderson. The only hesitation again is that game's on a Tuesday, and you could, if something weird happens, you could be without. But I'd still say, all things being equal, you go with Henderson.
That is a very important point indeed, that game being on Tuesday. Cody on Facebook says, need a streaming tight end on the waiver wire, and it's Barron. And you guys are going to agree that it's Barron when I read you the names. Donovan, Brock Wright, CJ Uzama, or Ferkser, Anthony Ferkser, I believe. That's tough. Deej, any options here? Or just don't start a tight end. Kidding.
No, CJ all day because he has shown that he can give you a bit of a fantasy burst. Again, I think that's you're looking at the player in the better offense. He's going to be on the field more. He's going to get you in the red zone more. And so what you're looking for is exposure to the potential of getting a touchdown for a tight end, because most at this point, other than the top 4 guys, are pretty tight end dependent. So I would pick CJ.
Yeah, and Cody, no disrespect whatsoever. Every single fantasy manager on earth has been in this situation where you're looking to stream a tight end, and it is Barron. So, Andy, who are you going with in this spot?
Yeah, all you can do out of that group is hope for a touchdown and to save a day. And who's going to get you a touchdown? It's going to be CJ because he's gotten touchdowns. Firkser's not even the top of his depth chart in Tennessee. You're looking 2-3 down the hole for Firkser. And I forget the name of the other guy, but I'm going to tell you I'm not picking him. So I'm going to Zoma because the guy we've seen he's caught 2 touchdowns in a game. He's caught 8 touchdowns in a game. He could also get you 1 catch for 8 yards. But out of those 3, I think you got to go with Azoma because he has physically done it before this season.
Yeah, it's Brock Wright, just for reference.
No.
But yeah.
Brock wrong.
Stay away.
Yeah.
Luca on YouTube is asking James Conner or Michael Carter back in the lineup for the Jets. James Conner. Andy, I talked about it. Guy's been in the end zone 14 times this season, knows how to get it done in the red zone, but Chase Edmonds back in the lineup today. Which one is it?
Boy, I love the James Conner play, and I also really like we talked about Michael Carter, there's not a lot of options. That garbage time check down. And even though Robert Saleh said he's going to be worked back in, okay, the coach is telling us that. Coaches either lie, misdirect, whatever all the time. I'm still, as long as there's no setbacks before, I'm going to go with James Conner. That end zone is too enticing to me. And I'd rather see Michael Carter. There's certainly situations where Michael Carter makes a lot of sense this week. But out of this case, I just don't fully trust that he is going to get that full workload. And what does that full workload look like in this Jets offense?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets are just so bad. It's hard to trust anyone in their offense. So DJ, James Conner or Michael Carter?
Yeah, I would take James Conner. Assuming we don't get any news that he's not going to be down, that he's going to play. Better offense, much higher exposure and usage in the red zone. He's the clear play.
Okay, let's move on because we have a ton of questions here, but I'm going to try and get through them as quickly as possible. But it's playoff time, so the people want us to help them out, and that's awesome. Connor on YouTube is asking Amari Cooper, Myles Gaskin, or Antonio Gibson. It appears all 3 are going to be active today. So Donovan, Cooper, Gaskin, or Gibson?
I have probably said take other players other than him all year in this spot, but I'm going to say Gibson. McKissick is down. Washington has a mess at the quarterback position. Their best player is Gibson. He has been in a bit of a Miles Sanders, why don't they give him the ball more scenario, but I'm going to pick Gibson of that group.
Andy, same question.
Most times I would take Gibson, but guys, and here's another thing. This is another Tuesday game. You could have Taylor Heineke back. You could have Kyle Allen back, who's also not very good. Or you could have none and have Kyle Shermer, the son of Pat, the terrible head coach and decent offensive coordinator. I don't want to be in that world. I don't want anything to do with Washington this week at all. So I'm going to take Gibson off the table in that case. So with that being said, I'm going to say Cooper.
Yeah, it's very tough to trust. And it just seems like this COVID situation, like some players get it, other players don't get it. Those guys are in the backfield together, like Heineke and Gibson. They're practicing all week. It's obviously a very fluid and weird situation. But with that game moving, there is a ton of risk, as we've addressed earlier, waiting for guys to play on Monday or Tuesday, given the circumstances. Okay, Jack on YouTube, Lamar Jackson denotes if playing, or Taysom Hill, who has been not a great real-life quarterback lately, but he is getting it done from a fantasy perspective. All of those people who said the running translates into a lot of fantasy points, they have been correct, DJ.
Yeah, this is essentially, and my choice is Taysom Hill. This would be essentially taking your starting running back and starting him at the quarterback position. Like if fantasy just said positions don't matter. So I'd pick Hill.
Andy, same question for you. I mean, it's been frustrating from you're watching the game and he's struggling so obviously to pass the ball. But when he takes off for a 20, 30-yard run and you're a fantasy manager, you're like, I don't care that he's thrown 10 straight incompletions. That doesn't affect me at all. No. I'm getting points on the ground and it works for me. So is it enough to start him over Lamar Jackson if Lamar in fact plays?
Absolutely it is. For one, if Lamar does play, he still has a bone bruise on his ankle. His game is based on his mobility. You take away the mobility, what are you doing? Taysom Hill is like a less cool Tim Tebow without the pose, without the biceps, right? Like it's what for Taysom Hill, you could have him throw, and we've seen it, guys, literally throw 4 interceptions, run for 100 yards, and get you 26 fantasy points. Taysom Hill, it could be and probably will be look like a disaster, a mess, but at the end of the day, you look down at your box score and your fantasy pool, and you see that you got yourself plus 20 fantasy points. And that's more than we can say for Lamar Jackson a lot of times this year.
100%. Nathan on Facebook is asking Scary Terry McLaurin or DK Metcalf. You addressed the Washington football team quarterback situation, Andy. That's tough. McLaurin's great, but that's a lot to overcome.
Yeah, listen, guys, I don't blame either of those players. You cannot blame the talent of McLaurin and Metcalf, undeniable. But their quarterback situations are not letting them get the ball. Mm-hmm. That being said, would I rather chance that Russell Wilson gets it figured out for a couple plays rather than possibly Kyle Schmermer? No. I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. I'm going to go Super Bowl champion Russell Wilson, even though it's been a terrible year, and chance and hope that he figures it out with Metcalf rather than Terry McLaurin, who knows who's going to be throwing in the ball on Tuesday.
Deej, Scary Terry or DK Metcalf?
Listen, things have been scary for Terry. I know DK Metcalf has not given fantasy owners what they expected, but he's in a much better situation. And quite frankly, neither has Terry McLaurin. So I would say Metcalf for this week.
All right, let's roll into the rapid fire portion of the show. And we'll keep it going for another 5 minutes or so, as long as that's cool with Colin. Yeah, I'm getting the nod. I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay, great. So we'll keep it going. Megalodon65 on YouTube. Chase Claypool, DJ Moore, Brandon Cooks. Bench 1. So, in other words, pick 2. Half PPR. Andy.
So was it Cooks, Moore,
and Chase Claypool?
I would bench Moore.
I would bench Moore as well.
We're all benching Moore. That's an easy one for rapid fire. Gabriel on Facebook. Which is a better flex? Duke Johnson, David Johnson, or Michael Carter? It's Michael Carter all day.
Michael Carter.
We can all move on.
Michael Carter.
Yeah. Yes, Michael Carter. Taupe on YouTube. Play 1. James Conner, Darrell Henderson, or Miles Sanders. Eagles situation. 4 running backs in the backfield. Donovan, Conner, Henderson, or Sanders.
If Henderson plays, I'd say Henderson.
Yeah, I'll say this. I'll say the same. Slight edge to Henderson over Conner.
Yeah, it seems like it's a question of whether Conner can get into the end zone again, and then that buoys his fantasy output. Carrie on Facebook, Marvin Jones or Rashad Bateman? Andy.
I'll go Jones.
Hey, Urban Meyer is gone. He fought with him. Now he's going to win in the end zone. Let's go Jags.
Let's go
Jags. Everyone's on the Jags today. Yeah. They're a new team. No Urban Meyer. Everybody's on the Jags. And James Robinson, Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault, fire them all up. Bob on YouTube, pick 2, half PPR, Miles Sanders, Zeke, or Jeff Wilson. Donovan, I'll go to you.
Oh, that's tough. I mean, Zeke, because he's going to be on the field, even though the production hasn't been there. And I think the Eagles could get themselves in a bit of a shootout. So I will say Miles Sanders as well.
Andy.
Yeah, I'll say Zeke and Sanders.
And Jeff Wilson, just a casualty of Deebo Samuel getting a million runs out of the backfield. It's about time they make Deebo eligible for running back. I'm campaigning for that for next season. Nathan on YouTube, who should I start, Devontae Freeman or Zeke? Full PPR. Donovan, I'll go to you. I always defer to you on Cowboys questions first. So Zeke or Devontae Freeman?
I would say Zeke. Devontae Freeman's not giving you any production in the passing game. And they're going to face like 11,000 people in the box in Baltimore this week.
Yeah. Same question, Andy. Devontae Freeman or Zeke? Full PPR.
Yeah, no matter who the quarterback is in Baltimore who plays, they're going to make that quarterback beat you with their arm. So there's not going to be a whole lot of room. I like what Freeman's done overall this season out of what the expectations were. But yeah, Ezekiel Elliott's the play.
3 more for you guys. Isaac on YouTube says, welcome to the playoffs. My opponent went off with Travis Kelce, so I need top quality help. Iffy QB situation. Russell, I'm assuming that's Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, or Taysom Hill. I'll begin there. There's another follow-up question, but Andy, let's begin there. Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, or Taysom Hill?
I'm going to say Joe Burrow. Slight edge over Taysom Hill.
Deej.
Taysom Hill, if you need to do the extraordinary, Taysom Hill could give you 3 rushing touchdowns. I'd say Taysom Hill.
The other follow-up question is Darrell Henderson or T. Higgins? Andy, we've been on T. Higgins all day long.
Yeah.
Recommended him a bunch of times here, but same goes for Darrell Henderson. So which one is it?
Give me this. Give me the Bengals stack, boys. I'll go Higgins and Burrow here.
Higgins and Burrow, Deej.
From a viewing perspective, I do like a stack. And so either way, I would say Higgins is the play. But if you're trying to catch up real quickly, all those Higgins TDs counting as 2, that might be a nice way for you to make this day interesting.
Isaac, fire up the Bengals. SP on YouTube. Hey guys, who should I start at my flex? DJ Moore, Rashad Penny, or KJ Osborne, who we haven't heard much, but he is playing. And Adam Thielen is a game time decision. So Andy, KJ Osborne could be a sneaker or sneaky pick here. Who are you going with?
Yeah, last week I got KJ Osborne in there, and it paid off big. And we've seen this season, guys, when Thielen's not in and Osborne is, dude pays off. And if he is a game time decision, and if it's iffy and maybe he's not 100%, I think you go KJ Osborne.
Donovan.
It's a flex for a reason. Have fun with it. I mean, Penny might be a nice play, but Osborne certainly has huge boom potential, so I like Osborne.
Mike on YouTube, and this is the final question. Half PPR flex, Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon, Brandon Ayuk, or Michael Carter? Donovan, I'll begin with you. I know we've recommended Ayuk a couple times already today. Is it the same thing here amongst this group of 4?
I'm going Edmonds. Half PPR, maybe I would lean to Ayuk, but it's not like he's a heavy target guy. Edmonds might have as many targets as Ayuk. I do think actually Melvin Gordon being back up, he is a good play. I think both of the Broncos running backs will give you good numbers, but in this group, I like Edmonds.
Andy, Melvin Gordon, Chase Edmonds, Brandon Ayuk, or Michael Carter?
I can make a case for all of them. I'm going to say Brandon Ayuk. I just wanted to see what his target share was over the last few weeks. We got 7, 6, 6, and 10 last week, and you're against Atlanta. So I think that could be a nice outing for him. I'll go Ayuk.
Awesome. Fellas, it's been a whirlwind of a season so far.
Yeah.
If you are lucky enough to be in the playoffs, we wish you all the luck in the world. If you have any more questions that you can get to us in time, then feel free to write us on Twitter or wherever you can get a hold of us, and we will do our best to answer all of those questions. For Andy McNamara, Donovan Bennett, I'm Jesse Rubinoff. I wish you good luck in all of your postseasons, and we will see you for Week 16. Thanks for watching.